Reef DVM's coming at you today with hauling a little manure. Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. But I wanted to give you an update on the ABi spreader. Some people have been asking how it's been holding up here in Minnesota. It gets pretty dang cold. This morning it's about 5 above. So this pile is pretty much frozen like a rock. It's been in here for days. A load like this takes us, a couple weeks to get made, so to speak, with the horses. It's time to take it out. It is frozen. It is hard. We're going to jump in the 3720 here. This is my daughter's Anna's chore, taking out the P50. The P50 is one of the smaller ABi manure spreaders, but we definitely like it. You hook it up to the 3720, and we can take it out. For a couple horses, this manure spreader probably need to be emptied maybe once a month. Obviously, for more horses, you're gonna have to empty it sooner, or get a bigger model. ABi makes a good spreader though. This one's got the polyfloor in it, and this one's got the chains on it. It's a good PTO drive spreader. Now they do make ground drive spreaders too, but I'm a fan of PTO, and I'm going to show you why. Because in the wintertime, I don't want to go out and kick this in the fields. I actually want to compost this manure. This particular load, I'm having Anna here take down to the compost pile. For the compost pile to work, it's got to have good bacteria. It's got to have plenty of heat, especially in these Minnesota cold days. 5 degrees outside, a lot of people would think, no, your compost pile will be doing nothing. But I found that if you put a couple good loads of manure on it, you can stay, 40, 45 degrees, several feet down into it, and then keep composting all winter long, which is a wonderful thing on the farm. Because we need our compost, we need our manure. It's part of life here. It's our fertilizer, so it has to be ready come spring. We need it to be broken down, especially in the bottom of the pile. So, getting that compost, which is, organic food remnants and different types of, squash and pumpkins and stuff from the year to get to break down. That's what we need. So as she drives back here, it gets a little bumpier. One thing about the 3720 John Deeres, they're not a real wide wheelbase tractor for 40-some horse tractor. It's got plenty of power, but being it's not real wide base, when you start getting on the snow and in the fields, it gets a little rough. So just bear with the camera here. I'm sitting in the little instructor seat. That particular seat, I also bounce a little bit more just because of my body weight on it. Anna's a good driver. She'll get us there in plenty of time. The P50 ABi manure spreader does have a kicker on the back end of it to fling manure. I personally right now have that off. I'll keep that off all winter long, again, so that I can deposit the manure in piles, or even spread it out on the trails where I want it, on certain areas where I'm trying to build up the ground a little bit. I really like horse manure for that because it's full of a lot of shavings, and the shavings give a lot of bulk to the manure. The cattle manure, not so much. That's a better manure for the gardens. So as we come up here to the south garden here, which is up by the pumpkins, I'm just going to back this beast right up in there and get this thing dumped out. This doesn't take long, folks. The whole process to empty this thing probably takes less than 2 minutes into this pile. So you can see this pile's about maybe 1.5 feet tall or so, and I need it to be about 3 or 4 feet tall. And the pile has condensed down since the winter snows have started on it. So we'll probably put 2 or 3 loads of manure on it to build it back up, help accelerate that heat, get that bacteria going again, and get things working. I never really kick these things in full gear when the manure is frozen like this. I think it's hard on the chains and hard on the back end. So I tend to set it, a little bit below the PTO speed that's recommended. So in this case, I got the tractor running about maybe 2400 instead of 25, 26 out the butt. With that RPM at say 2400, it seems to be about the right speed to grind through this frozen manure pile. As you can see, the P50 does a good job. Now the P50 also has settings for how fast the chain moves. I've got it in one of the slowest settings here, that way that the beater bars in the back there can just chew through the manure that's frozen instead of get just rammed full of hard frozen chunks. As you can see, there's still a lot of frozen in it. It isn't going to break it up into the smallest pieces, but it does a really good job, folks. This has been a fantastic spreader for us. There is literally no rust on this spreader, which is good. And the way they've got it bed lined with like a bed liner inside it, and then that poly floor. The only thing that really wears any paint on it is those darn beater bars, and they clean right up the minute you start busting through the manure again. As you can see, the hay wraps around it a little bit. That's in the manure. It's no big deal. Just take a utility knife and cut it off maybe once a year. Overall, it's been a fantastic device. So again, doing this follow-up on it, we're hauling some manure out here, letting my daughter do her chores and just kind of going with her here with the camera. All I can say is this has been a fantastic tool for us. I'd highly recommend a P50 PTO or ground drive for a small farm. It's great for homesteaders. It holds up well. It's got a lot of power to it. And like I said, 5 degrees out here, everything's frozen solid, and it's still kicking away just fine. So once we finish this up, we'll get Anna here turned around. Once she gets turned around, we'll start heading this beast back to the farm, and we'll put the gate down here in a second, and it'll be ready to load up with more manure. The gate now is down. I'm getting ourselves turned around here. As you can see, we're going to go by the garden edge. There's the greenhouse, by the way. That's been doing absolutely fantastic. Can't say enough about having one of those. As a farm and a homesteader, you need those. Without that, at least up in this part of the country, you just can't get an early enough start with your plants and your seeds. It's just a really good tool. As far as the topic again of the different types of manure, I'd highly recommend in the garden that when you're working with the manure that's from the cattle, that you dig that in. It seems to do really good if you spread that in the fall and just dig it into the ground and let it sit all winter, versus composting like we're doing here with the horse manure, where we're making a pile on top of our kitchen compost and helping accelerate the breakdown of that. We also have 2 more types of manure on the farm. We have some manure from the goats, and we have chicken manure. And the chicken manure is just fantastic for the garden. It just brings it to life, which is great. But both of those manures we pretty much throw into the manure spreader, and they go directly into the garden in the spring. See, as you can see, that P50 trails really nice. It doesn't bounce much. It's a heavy enough machine where it just does a great job. I believe they actually make ABi actually makes spreaders that you can use on ATVs and even small lawn tractors. So if this is too big of a spreader for your small operation, look into them. They make some other spreaders too, and their spreaders obviously range from, I think, probably somewhere around 3,000 or 4,000 all the way up to 10 to 15,000 for their big monsters. Maybe they're even more than that. I haven't looked into them in a few years as far as cost, but again, these have been great tools for us. 3720, folks, pulls it with no problem. I'm sure I could pull this with a 1 series or a 2 series too. We're going to head back up to the farm and get this piece of equipment put away, get our butts back into the farmhouse and work on some other chores. I appreciate you watching, folks. Thank you for liking and subscribing to our channel. If you haven't, please do. It's definitely the way that we keep track of things and keep putting out great videos that you like. Thank you.